What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto gets Sasuke mother pregnant? If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. Konoha 4 years after the Kyuubi attack. In the small park of Konoha, a young woman of 23 sat on a bench and watched her 2 children play. The woman stood at 5 feet 5 inches, long red hair that stopped at her lower back, bright green eyes, a wide smile and a wide body. She wore an orange shirt, a black vest, black pants, and a pair of shinobi boots. On her side was a katana with a red hilt. The children she watched was a set of twins, a boy and a girl. The girl had long red hair, like her own, but she wore glasses, had green eyes, and long red hair with a few blonde strains, wearing a green shirt and blue pants. The boy was almost a carbon copy of his father, but his face resembled her more in shape. He even had her nose and 3 whisker-like marks on each cheek. He had wild blonde hair, with a few strikes of red here and there, bright blue eyes and a smile as wide as hers. He had on a white shirt, blue shorts. They were her whole world. The boy laughed as the girl chased him. "Catch me if you can, Karen-ne-chan," yelled the boy, jumping out of reach of the girl. The girl laughed as she tackled him to the ground. "I got you, Naruto-ni-chan," said Karen as they both laughed loudly. Kushina smiled at them. She got up and walked over to them. They both smiled at her, before they ran over and gave her a hug. She laughed as they did this. "Sounds like the squirts are having a good time today," came a strong voice. The 3 turned around to find a tall brown-haired man who looked to be in his late 30s, with a chunin vest, black short-sleeve shirt, black pants, and his headband wrapped around his arm. "Uncle Nawaki!" yelled the 2 kids as they both charged and gave him a hug. "Hey guys, how's it going?" asked Nawaki. "Fine uncle," said the 2 kids as Nawaki went up in smoke, making the twins stare at where he just was. "Looking for me?" asked Nawaki, appearing behind them and making them clap. "Nawaki, you know better than to tease the kids with jutsu that they can't learn yet," said Kushina, mock frowning at him, making the kids laugh. Nawaki grinned and rubbed the back of his head. "Sorry Kushina-chan," said Nawaki. Kushina smiled at her friend. "It's alright. Anyway, we'll see you later tonight. Remember, it's the twins' 4th birthday," said Kushina. Nawaki smiled. "Alright, I'll tell my sister and brother-in-law. Until then, ya-ne," said Nawaki, vanishing. Kushina turned to the kids and began to lead them out of the park and into the village, making sure that they stayed by her side. A rule of hers was that if they ever went into town, they had to stay by hers or the other side. There were only a handful of people in the whole village she trusted. Many resented the children for being born on the day of the attack. Even though Minato and her planned to take their biggest secret to the grave with them. The fact that Naruto had the Kyuubi sealed inside him. That was the one thing she cursed Minato for. She was brought out of her thoughts by Karen shaking her shirt. "What is it, baby?" asked Kushina. "Ka-san, Ni-san got separated in the crowd," said Karen, worried for her brother. Kushina's eyes widened, before she lifted her daughter on her back and jumped into the air. With Naruto. Naruto gulped. He had gotten separated from his mother. The worst thing that could happen to any young child. He looked around and soon realized that he was in an alley. He was about to leave when the entrance to the alley was blocked by 9 men. All smelled strongly of sake. "Looky here boys, we found the Kyuubi brat," said the man in the middle, hiccuping. "Too bad it couldn't have been the other one. I would have had fun breaking her," said another man. Naruto glared at them. "You won't hurt my sister," yelled Naruto, charging the man, only to get slugged hard in the face and sent into a wall. The men walked forward and began to kick him and beat him with stones. "Fire style. Phoenix flower jutsu," yelled a familiar voice. The men yelled and fell down onto the ground with burn marks on their bodies. Naruto opened his eyes and gave a sigh of relief. It was Rin. Rin was 15 years old and stood at 5 feet 4 inches, short brown hair, purple marks on both her cheeks, brown eyes, C-cup S, long slender legs, wearing a blue shirt, black shorts, and shinobi sandals. "Rin-chan," said Naruto as he was picked up by her. Rin was always Naruto's favorite babysitter, while his sister liked Anko better. Rin smiled at Naruto before kissing his forehead, making him blush. "How are you doing, Naruto-chan?" asked Rin. "Good, Rin-chan," said Naruto as Kushina appeared. "Naru-chan, my god, look at you. What did those bastards do to you?" asked Kushina. They called me Kyuubi and Killer, said Naruto. Kushina's eyes widened. Before they narrowed. Rin, take the kids to the house, said Kushina, hating Karen over. Somebody is in trouble, said Karen in a teasing manner. Kushina smiled, but Rin could see the cruel underlining to it. You're right, Kar-chan. Somebody is in trouble, said Kushina, vanishing. Konoha Council Chambers. The council was in attendance for its weekly meeting. Tsunade wasn't too happy about it. Somehow her clan had lost some of its power after the fourth died. Everyone knew that the Hokages had a relationship on some level, be it student and teacher or family-wise. Tsunade held the seat of her clan as well as a seat as a Sannin for the village. Tsunade looked up as the clan council began to argue with the civilians. Tsunade was about to step in when the doors of the room flew open and two Anbu hit the ground. The shinobi in the room prepared to draw blood when they realized that it was Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze, and she was pissed off. Namikaze-sama, what can we do for you? Asked Fugaku, eyeing her. He had been trying to get one of her children married to either Sasuke or Tokiko, but so far it had proved in vain. My son was attacked by civilians today. This isn't the first time they tired either, and it's getting on my last nerve, said Kushina, her hand on her katana. A civilian smirked at her. Good. Maybe the little demon will learn his place after this. Maybe you'll finally give him up and come to a more suitable husband. Maybe my son, said the civilian. Kushina unsheathed her sword. I'm going to ask this once. Leave my son alone, said Kushina. And if not? Asked the civilian, making her smile a little too sweetly. Kushina vanished, before she appeared behind the civilian with her sword to his throat and slashing it open. The civilian fell dead, before she moved around killing them all. She soon stopped and everyone was looking at her in shock. They now remembered that she was the Red Death. Kushina appeared in the center of the room with blood dripping from her katana. She looked at the remaining members of the council and sighed. I'll be taking my children from this village, said Kushina. Danzo stood up. You can't take them away. They are the legacy of the fourth, yelled Danzo. Kushina looked at him. As long as fools like you live, then they will never be safe. I will leave Konoha with my kids. I will remain an ally of this village and nothing more, said Kushina. Sarutobi nodded. I understand what you are saying, Kushina. I wish you the best in your journey, said Sarutobi. Tsunade looked at her friend. Kushina, are you sure about this? What about the kids? Asked Tsunade. Kushina smiled at her friend. They'll grow like they should. As children, said Kushina. Tsunade stood up. I, Tsunade Senju of the Sannin, hereby declare that my clan shall follow the Uzumaki clan, said Tsunade, making many stare at her. Bust Tsunade-sama, started Sume. No buts. Those kids are my godchildren and I'll be damned if I leave them, said Tsunade. Very well then, said Sarutobi. As long as they remained allies of Konoha, he would have no reason to hunt them down. Tsunade and Kushina left to inform their families. Namikaze home. Dan looked at the two of them like they were insane. Dan stood at 5 feet 9 inches, long blue hair, brown eyes, wearing a white jacket, black pants, and blue sandals. Nawaki was sitting next to him. Anko, Shizune, and Rin looked at the two older women. Anko was 13, stood at 5 feet 3 inches, long purple hair, pulled up in a wild ponytail, still developing B-cup S, wearing a brown shirt, white shorts, and sandals. Shizune was 14, stood at 5 feet 5 inches, short black hair that she inherited from her great-grandfather, slender body, C-cup S, wearing a black battle kimono. What the hell were you two thinking? We've had to put up with a lot of crap from the council for taking in Rin and Anko, but this is insane, said Dan. Anko and Rin had both been taken into the Uzumaki and Senju clans as vassals, giving them clan status, but that didn't go over well with the head bastards. Dan cared for them like they were his kids, but the council just gave him a headache. We have to leave, bro. Sooner or later the council is going to get a lucky shot at Naruto or find a loophole that lets them kill him or turn him into a slave, said Nawaki, frowning. Him and the council had some bad blood that went back to his genin days. He had failed to kill an assassin, but had stopped the assassin from completing the mission by taking his arm off. Nawaki had been stabbed and nearly lost his life. If it wasn't for the fact Tsunade and Dan were on that very mission as well, he would have died. Rin leaned back and crossed her legs. Come on, it won't be that bad, said Rin. Come on, Tusan, said Shizune. Alright, Pack everything into scrolls. We'll be leaving soon, said Dan, making the girls smile. 2 days later, a week after leaving Konoha, the people that had left Konoha were all sitting around a campfire. Rin, Shizune, Anko, Karen and Naruto were sleeping, while the 4 adults were talking. "Nei-san, I was thinking it'd be a bad idea to go to Kumo or Iwa. I know you have a bounty on your head from them. Dan and I also have bounties from them because of our parts in the last war. Sans on friendly terms with Leaf, and all minor villages don't want to get invalid with us," said Nawaki, closing his eyes. "That leaves Mist or countries without villages," said Tsunade. "Mist is out of the question. Tsunade, your family carries a bloodline, too, if I'm not mistaken," said Dan. "Then you must not know our personal family history. You see, the Senju clan are closer related to the Uzumaki than people knew. Tobarama and Hashirama shared the same father but different mothers. Tobarama's mother was from the Uzumaki clan, but she died in childbirth, so he was given to his father and raised by his brother's mother," said Tsunade. Dan's eyes widened. "So that means you 3 are related?" asked Dan. Nawaki nodded. "By clan laws and rights we are, even though we don't share the same direct blood," said Nawaki. "I see. Not bloodkin, but still family," said Dan, leaning back. "So where should we go?" asked Tsunade, looking at the others. "Mist is probably best. They were close with Whirlpool country as well as other water nations," said Kushina. "It would be for the best," said Nawaki as they went to sleep. 3 days later, Water Country. The group had entered Water Country and found the Hidden Mist village with ease. While the Hidden Mist wasn't as large as Konoha, it was still hard to dismiss the fact it was still pretty damn big. The village had many buildings that could pass for homes or shops. It was also surrounded by several mountains and a heavy mist, making it difficult to find unless you knew its location. Once reaching the gate, a Chunin guard sent a bird to the office requesting an escort for the traveling group. It was about 5 minutes later that a genin appeared. She looked around 13 years old, 5 feet 1 inch, large C-cup S. Long russet red hair with a bun sitting on top with a blue ribbon, jade green eyes, tone and slender body. Wearing blue shirt without any shoulders over a fishnet bodysuit, black shirt, knee-high blue boots. Around her neck was a mist headband. "Hello, who are you?" asked Dan. "I'm Yukari. Welcome to the Hidden Mist village," said Yukari. "We're honored. I'm Kushina Uzumaki and these are my children, Naruto Uzumaki and Karen Uzumaki," said Kushina as the kids waved at her. Yukari took one look at them before squealing and hugging Naruto to her chest. Naruto blushed. Dan and Nawaki were cursing the blonde boy's luck. Karen, Tsunade, Shizune, and Kushina were all giggling at how uncomfortable Naruto looked, while Anko and Rin were glaring daggers at the girl. "Ka-san, is this pretty lady taking us to meet the Mizukage?" asked Naruto. Yukari squealed, before hugging Naruto tighter to her s. "Ah, he's so well-mannered and polite." "That's it, cutie, you're my future husband," said Yukari, making Naruto blush harder than he was a second ago. Rin growled before she got Naruto from Yukari. "Not that I'm complaining, but could you please take us to the Mizukage?" asked Rin. Yukari still had that smile on her face as she nodded. "Sure thing. I never got the rest of your names," said Yukari. Anko's eyes never left Yukari. "I'm Anko," said Anko. "Rin," said Rin, still glaring at Yukari as well. "I'm Dan. This is my wife Tsunade, our daughter Shizune, and my brother-in-law Nawaki." "Can you take us to the Mizukage Tower?" asked Kushina. Yukari shook her head. "No tower here, we're going to the Mizukage Mansion," said Yukari as she began to lead them to a large mansion that was in one of the hills. At the mansion, once they arrived at the mansion, they quickly realized that it was large. It had 3 floors, a large door and a few guards. Sitting at a table was a man who stood at a remarkable 6 feet 5 inches, spiked black hair, a large sword on his back, wearing a gray sweater, gray pants, and a dark blue Jonin vest. Next to him was a young child, with black hair, dark brown eyes, wearing a pink kimono. "Who is that?" asked Dan, looking at the man. "That is Zabuza Momochi and his young apprentice Haku. Zabuza is a member of the 7 Shinobi Swordsmen, too," said Yukari as she opened the doors and led them to the Mizukage's office. Dan stared at the man. He had heard rumors of the one they called the Demon of the Hidden Mist. They said that at the age of 16 he slew the whole graduating class of that year. Dan shivered. He knew that he might have years on Zabuza, but if Zabuza was anything like his reputation then he would be one hell of a fighter. They walked up to the second floor and found themselves in the center room. Yukari knocked lightly. "Enter," was what they heard. Yukari pushed the door open and they found themselves in front of the Mizukage. Yukari closed the doors leaving them with the Mizukage. The Mizukage appeared to be rather young. Looking around 18, he had tan-colored hair, red eyes, a long scar appearing under his left eye, wearing a green cloak, full black bodysuit. "My name is Yagura. What can I do for you people?" asked the Yagura. "Mizukage-sama, we would like to live inside your village, not as your ninja, but as allies," said Kushina. "What could you bring to my village to warrant your stay?" asked Yagura. "I am Kushina Uzumaki of the Uzumaki clan. These are my children Naruto and Karen. We are the last of the Uzumaki," said Kushina. Yagura put his hand on his chin. "Uzumaki, huh? They say there isn't a clan on the face of the planet that can rival yours in seer power and cunning. Not even the Uchiha. I know of them, the Senju clan. Praised for your skills on the battlefield as well as their tactics," said Yagura. Nawaki glared at the man. "He's done his homework. He already knew of us and yet we know nothing of him," thought Nawaki. Kushina frowned. "So you know of us," said Kushina. "Yes, I do. It's hard to have not heard of the Red Death Kushina and the medic goddess Tsunade. I will assign you a home. You may stay here as my guests and allies," said Yagura as they filed out of the room. Yukari stood by the door with a lollipop in her mouth. She took it out and looked at the people. "I'm your escort to your new home," said Yukari as she began to walk them towards the house. The house was in the west part of the village. The house was fairly big and had 2 floors. A large garden out front, and in the back was a training field. The house itself was blue. Nawaki opened the door and they all entered the house together. They were absolutely amazed by the size of it. The living room itself was large and was already furnished. It had a circular couch facing the fireplace with a few others around it. A few pictures of the village and country on its red walls. The kitchen was large as well. They didn't have time to really explore the rest of the house as Yukari led them upstairs. She showed them the bedrooms. The house had 17 bedrooms. One of them was already marked Yukari. "Yukari, do you live here alone?" asked Kushina looking to her. "Yep, I do. My family was murdered by the Mizukage. Ever since he came to power a year ago he's been ruling with an iron fist. Even the SSS have fewer privileges," said Yukari. Everyone was shocked by this. "Can't the council control him a bit?" asked Nawaki. Yukari looked at him. "This isn't the Leaf. We don't have a council. The Mizukage's word is absolute," said Yukari, walking over to her room and closing the door. 4 years later, Naruto walked around the Mist Village and was bored. Karen was hanging with her best friend Haku. He had grown a few inches, and his hair had become a bit longer. He wore a blue long-sleeve shirt, blue pants. He had been training with Yukari today and as normal she teased him with her body and words. His mother and Aunt Tsunade were already talking about marriage between the two. Whenever they brought it up around Rin and Anko the temperature seemed to drop, though for the life of him he couldn't understand why. He walked over to the forest when he heard what sounded like people fighting. He ran in and found 2 girls fighting each other. The first girl was around his age, had short green hair, pink eyes, dark skin, wearing a black baggy shirt and boots. He then looked over at the other girl. She stood a head taller than Naruto did, long blue hair, black eyes, wearing a green shirt, black pants, and sandals. "Back off!" yelled the girl with green hair. "Never!" yelled the girl with blue hair, throwing a kunai. The kunai hit the other girl in the face, sending her to the ground. "Now you die!" yelled the blue-haired girl. Naruto jumped in the way and stopped the kunai. He caught the blue-haired girl by the arm. "Okay, that's enough of that," said Naruto. The blue-haired girl looked at him. "Who the hell are you?" asked the girl. "Naruto Uzumaki." "You are?" asked Naruto, looking at the girl with calm and cool eyes that he learned from Nawaki. "Guren," said the girl. Naruto nodded and looked at the other girl. "And you are?" asked Naruto. "I'm a runaway from the hidden waterfall. My name is Fu," said the girl. Naruto nodded. He looked at the girl more closely and noticed something off about her. Like her aura was different, almost like his. Naruto and his sister shared that in a way. They could both read the auras of people. They could turn it off at will if they wanted to, but when in danger they could see clearly. They had yet to ask their mother about it, but they planned to soon. Her aura was yellow, kind of like his, but his was more on the orange side of it. His sister and mother had blue. He found it strange. "Can you two come with me?" asked Naruto. The girls looked at him strangely. "Why?" asked Gurren. "Because we're friends now," said Naruto, grinning at them. "Friends?" asked the two girls. "Yeah, that's what you call people you like," said Naruto, making both of the girls blush. "Thank you, Naruto-kun," said the two girls, before they glared at each other. "Let's go," said Naruto as they quickly left. Mizuka's office. Yagura leaned back in his chair. This was the second time in 4 years Sandy had stirred. The other time was when he met those kids. When he stared at the blonde boy, his demon seemed to be warning him of something great and terrible. It took him a while to realize that another host was in the village, and now there were 4 hosts inside the village, including himself. He had a fighting force like no other right at the tips of his fingers, and yet he couldn't get his hands on the boy because he hadn't sworn allegiance to the village nor the new host, for he didn't know who it was. "Doesn't matter. I'll soon control them all," said Yagura as he picked up his fish and began to eat. Uzumaki household. Yukari sighed. Her favorite blonde was nowhere in sight. Yukari had become quite the woman in the last 4 years. At 17 she now stood at 5 feet 5 inches. Her bust was now DD cup, long slender legs. She still wore her fishnet bodysuit that went all the way down her legs and left her shoulders, but over that she wore a battle kimono that left her shoulders bare, black biker shorts and boots. Yukari liked teasing Naruto, and in a few years he would be rip enough too. Yukari shivered at the possibilities. "Calm down, girl. When he's 14 and not a minute sooner," thought Yukari. After those thoughts passed her head, 2 of her favorite people walked in. Anko and Rin. She figured that neither of them had a thing on her. Anko, at the same age as herself, stood even with her, C-cup S, wore a long brown trench coat, a fishnet bodysuit that stopped at mid-thigh, and a skirt, shin guards, and boots. Rin, on the other hand, at the age of 19 stood at 5 feet 6 inches, long brown hair, D-cup S, wearing a purple kimono top, black hip-hugger pants, and boots. "Hey there, ladies," said Yukari in her normal cheery way. Anko and Rin scowled at her. It didn't take a whole lot of brains to realize that they didn't like the way she acted around Naruto. Rin was protective of Naruto in a way of a caring friend, while Anko always tried to outshine her in terms of flirting with Naruto. "Hello, Yukari-san," said Rin. "How's it going, tits?" said Anko. Rin turned to Anko. "Anko, that's inappropriate," said Rin. She didn't like Anko's vulgar language all that much. 1 month later. It had been a month since Gurren and Fu had been living with them. Naruto hung around them just as much as he did Haku and his sister. Currently Naruto was at the pool. Mist was relatively warm most of the year, but in winter it was damn freezing. It was also rare that the hidden mist wasn't misty, so a perfect day for a swim. Naruto had on a pair of orange trunks and was swimming around the pool. Haku had on a lavender one-piece suit, while his sister adopted a red one-piece. Gurren had on a green one-piece, while Fu took to white. Tsunade, Kushina, and Dan were also there. Tsunade had on a 2-piece bikini with a long skirt over it. Dan was wearing a pair of black shorts. Kushina wore a 2-piece blue outfit. Nawaki was over by the grill wearing a plain white shirt, tan shorts, and a Kiss the Cook apron. The other girls were still inside getting dressed. Naruto and Fu began to race from one side of the pool to the other before the girls came out. Nawaki looked at them for a split second, before he was nearly blown back by a nosebleed, but held it in. Dan was in a similar stance, but Tsunade was keeping him in check. Naruto got out the pool and blushed as he looked at the girls. Yukari wore a blue string bikini that showed off much of her body, and a good amount of cleavage. Anko was in a purple 2-piece with a skirt around her waist. Shizune was blushing in a white 2-piece and kept looking at the other girls. Rin wore a brown top and unzipped shorts that showed off her brown swimming bottoms. Karen walked over to her brother and smacked him on the head. They were wired like that. While few could read them, they were an open book to each other. They were just like that. Naruto grinned at his sister. "Thanks, Karen-chan, I needed that," said Naruto. "Anytime, Ni-chan," said Karen, smiling at her brother with her hands behind her back. She still liked to call him that. Naruto was grabbed in a massive hug by Anko. By now he was used to being smothered in their mounds, but that didn't stop him from blushing. "Ah, is Naruto-chan blushing for Anko-chan?" said Anko in a bit of a baby voice. Yukari ran up and began to wiggle her body into Naruto's, making him blush harder. "Hey, I want to hug Naruto-chan too," said Yukari. Rin growled at them. "Both of you grow up," said Rin. Karen sighed as Fu and Gurren looked at them. "Are they always like this, Karen-chan?" asked Gurren. Karen shook her head. "No, normally they're worse," said Karen. "Worse?" asked Fu. Shizune nodded. Normally they give him a nosebleed," said Shizune. Dan and Nawaki were laughing while Tsunade and Kushina talked about wedding plans. "Do you think he needs the man-to-man?" asked Nawaki, looking at his brother-in-law. "I agree with you on that, my friend," said Dan. "So Tsunade, how long do you give Yukari, Rin, and Anko, before they try to turn him into a man?" asked Kushina. "I give them until he's 14, said Tsunade. "I think 13, said Kushina. "I wonder if I'll get grandkids before he's 17? thought Kushina. 5 years later, Naruto growled as he looked out over the village. Naruto at 13 stood at 5 feet 4 inches, long blonde hair that fell to his shoulders with red strips in it, deep blue eyes, wearing a long blue coat with kanji for wind on the left arm and kanji for water on the right, and a picture of a fox on the back, a black muscle shirt, blue pants, and ninja boots. Next to him was Yukari. Yukari appeared to look much the same as she had before. The only difference was that she liked to cover her right eye, which Naruto thought made her look extremely wise. At 22 years of age she was getting marriage contracts, but always turned them down, saying she had a lover already. Mist was close to breaking out into civil war, and it was all that damn Yagura's fault. About 3 years ago the Kagaya clan attacked the village. They were quickly put down, but that had sparked the great bloodline hunt. Nearly 20 clans were put to death because of that man. The person responsible was his right-hand man Utakata. Those men were like him and Fu, host of great demons. Flashback 1 year ago. Naruto and Fu followed behind Utakata. The man had light brown hair that covered his left eye, brown eyes, stood at 5 feet 6 inches, was around Yukari's age, wore a blue kimono. In his hand was a blowing bubble wand. "Why did you come and get us, Utakata-san?" asked Naruto. He had learned about 3 years ago that both he and Fu were hosts to great demons. He the Kyuubi and she the Nanabi. They were both learning to control their demons and were on friendly bases with them. All three entered the office and saw Yagura sitting in his chair. "Hello my family," said Yagura, smiling at them. "Family?" asked Naruto and Fu. "Yes, family. Yagura-sama sees us as Naruto-kun and I as his brothers, and you Fu-chan as his sister. We all share the same destiny," said Utakata. "Really?" asked Fu, looking at the Mizukage. Yagura nodded. "Yes, we do. You two had already tapped into your demon's powers, but not fully and not yet. I want you to join me in taking over the world," said Yagura. Naruto glared at him. "Are you nuts? Even if you had a powerful enough army, and that's a big if, you'd need something strong enough to take out all the other cages if not at different times then at once," said Naruto, looking at Yagura. Yagura smiled. "That's what we are here for. If we can gather up the other members of our exclusive family, we'll turn the whole world into slaves. We will burn this world to the ground and turn it to ashes and then rebuild it in our image. As gods," said Yagura with a light smirk on his lips. Naruto gritted his teeth, before letting Kyuubi's chakra flow. "Are you mad, Yagura? Millions will die in such a large war," yelled Naruto. Yagura chuckled, before looking out the window. "I don't expect you to answer now, my young siblings. I'll first show you a taste of what we have planned for the world," said Yagura as Utakata saw them out of the room. Flashback end. Naruto stared at the home of Yagura. The bastard was a real piece of work, he was. He planned to kill every clan so that he and the other hosts could rule as gods of a new world, where they were the law of the world. A world Yagura was the true ruler of. A small faction of those who thought he had gone crazy had decided to take him down. The plan had been simple. Naruto and Yukari raced down the hill as fires broke out all over the village. Utakata had already been set to see what was happening. It was up to the girls now to take him on. Naruto saw an Anbu member in his way, so he broke his neck to stop him from interfering in the plan. Naruto and Yukari quickly raced inside the mansion to find Yagura waiting for them. "Do you reject my offer of power, little brother?" asked Yagura, titling his head to the side. "Power? What you want isn't power, it's domination of the world," yelled Naruto, getting into a stance. Yagura frowned. You could have whatever you want. Money, women, land to call your own. Anything, but you reject it. Why, brother? Asked Yagura as he stood up. Unlike you, Naruto-kun has a reason to fight. Yagura yelled, Yukari, glaring at the man before her. They felt a large amount of power suddenly come down upon them. It was powerful, almost insane. They looked over and saw that it was Yagura. It wasn't enough to put them on the ground, but it was enough to let them know why he was the Mizukage. Yagura turned his eyes to Yukari in a hard glare. I think I was talking to my brother, wench. Don't interfere in our conversation again or I'll kill you where you stand, yelled Yagura, before his eyes fell back on Naruto. Tell me, brother? Naruto unleashed his own power, making sure Yagura knew that he was going to be in for a hard fight. Because I have a family to protect, brother, said Naruto. Yagura put his hand on his chin. I see, brother. This false family of yours has poisoned your mind. Very well then, brother. I will remove this false family of yours, leaving only us, starting with you, yelled Yagura, glaring at Yukari. Yagura charged at Yukari, who pulled out a hidden kodachi. Naruto appeared before him and kicked Yagura in the stomach, sending him flying. Naruto had learned the skill of flash step from his mother. It was one of the Uzumaki's skills that allowed them to move fast in battle. Most Jonin could move fast, but not fast enough to leave after images of themselves. Yagura stopped himself before twisting and going no hand signs. Water style. Hydro cannon jutsu, yelled Yagura, launching a massive ball of water from his mouth. Yukari ran, thought her own. Water style. Misty shield jutsu, yelled Yukari. A dense mist gathered and the attack dissipated. Naruto gathered wind to his lungs. Wind style. Blazing drill jutsu, yelled Naruto, firing a volley of wind from his mouth. Yagura saw the attack coming and jumped out the way. When he looked behind him, he saw that the wall had melted from the heat that it gave off. Yagura charged at Naruto and threw out a punch. Naruto parried the punch before throwing out a high kick. Yagura ducked it and avoided a knee to the face before flipping to the side to avoid the kunai that was thrown at him. He landed on his feet before sweeping Naruto's feet from under him and palming him in his chest and sending him through a wall and into the garden. Yukari charged at Yagura and slashed him in his chest. Yagura grunted in pain before he threw out a kick that launched Yukari into the air. Yukari flipped before flowing through her hand signs. Water style. Water dragon jutsu, yelled Yukari as a dragon of 20 feet formed. Wind style. Wind flaken jutsu, yelled Naruto as a flaken with blue eyes and was 10 feet large flew at Yagura. Yagura knew that this was going to hurt, so he began to tap into his Sandy's power. A sickly purple chakra emerged from his body and he quickly ran through hand signs. Iron style. Armor of the underworld, yelled Yagura as the two attacks collided with him. Smoke kicked up and was massive. Naruto and Yukari regrouped before the smoke cleared. When it was clear, they both looked at Yagura in shock. His body was covered in a grayish shell-style armor. The helmet on his head resembled that of a samurai helmet that covered his right eye, leaving his left eye for the world to see. Behind him was two tails. Provo, brother, I didn't intend to use this against you, but I'm not taking any chances as long as this family has you under its control. You should feel honored, brother, for you are the first to see me use this much power in a very long time, said Yagura. Naruto growled before he tapped into his own mind. Kaibui, I need some power, yelled Naruto. How much you need, kid? Kyuubi asked Naruto. At least 2 tails for now. I want the third held for me, thought Naruto. You got it, said Kyuubi before flooding Naruto's pools. Naruto's eyes shot open as he grew fangs, his eyes turned purple. He soon became encloaked in a red chakra barrier that had 2 tails. He roared at Yagura. Yukari smirked before she put her kodachi into the ground. This fight is getting serious. I'd better prepare as well, said Yukari as water appeared next to her and formed into a large dragon. Yagura eyed the dragon before Yukari raised her hand and it shot at Yagura. Yagura jumped to the side, but to his amazement the dragon turned towards him and opened its jaws. Its jaws slammed down on Yagura before a large amount of electricity shot around him and shocked him. Yagura focused his power before creating a rupture shield that destroyed the dragon, only for it to reform next to her as she picked up her blade. What the hell? Yelled Yagura. Yukari smiled. My bloodline limit. It's called Hell's Tide. 1. It's a neat little bloodline. I can create animals like wolves, sharks, and other beasts. They think like those animals, but I have full control over them. It comes with the side effect of having charged particles added to its body, giving it an electric ability, said Yukari. Yagura growled, a sinful bloodline wilder in my village. He yelled. Yukari smirked at him. First generation 2 asshole. My mother had unique abilities for both lightning and water. I'm the same, said Yukari. Yagura charged at her only to be tackled by Naruto. They skidded to a halt and traded a flurry of blows. Naruto threw out a powerful kick that knocked him back. Yagura skidded back before the dragon charged at him. Yukari-chan held him off for a few minutes. I need time to test my new jutsu, said Naruto. Hurry Naruto-kun, I can only hold him for so long, yelled Yukari, focusing on Yagura. Naruto put out his hands and started a long chain of signs. Ice style. Deep freeze jutsu, yelled Naruto. In another part of town, Utakata was running through the town looking for the commanders that dared to oppose his master. Now, yelled a voice that he knew belonged to Karen. Water style. Water gun jutsu, yelled 3 voices. Crystal style. Crystal shrunken jutsu, yelled another voice. Utakata was pushed into a building from behind and then felt 5 shrunken impale him. He was pushed through the building. He landed on the ground before rolling. He skidded up right before looking at who did it. It was Anko, Karen, Rin, Shizune, Guren, and Fu. Karen had grown into a fine girl at 13. She stood at 5 feet 4 inches, long red hair, C-cup S, long slender legs, wearing oval glasses, a purple shirt that showed off her stomach, and black biker shorts that showed off her firm round ass. Rin stood at the same height she had before, but now she wore a loose red kimono top that showed off her ass, tight black pants, and sandals. Anko wore her same clothes, but if you asked anyone, she seemed to be even more wide than a few years ago. Shizune had changed her outfit to a black leather jacket over a blue shirt, black shorts and medical sandals. Fu now stood on even footing with Karen. Long green hair that had gotten darker over the years, soft pink eyes, C-cup S, wearing a white sleeveless shirt over a mesh shirt that showed off her stomach, mesh shorts with a white knee-length skirt over it, and long white sleeves that were sort of glove-like, and long white boots. Fu charged at Utakata and kicked him into the air. They had decided that it would be better not to give him a chance to retaliate. Karen flashed in front of him, before hammering him in his face, sending him to the ground. Utakata righted himself only to feel his arms disabled. He looked and noticed that it was Shizune and Rin that had done it. "You bitches, what did you do to my arms?" yelled Utakata. They smiled at him, before they held up their hands. Both their hands were glowing blue, indicating chakra scalpels. "Time for the end of you. Crystal style. Crystal drill break," yelled Guren as 3 crystals formed a drill around her arm, before she charged at Utakata. She slammed the drill into his heart, making him scream out in pain, before he fell over. The girls didn't want to take any chances, so they slashed his throat, before burning his body. "Even a strong ninja can be brought down by a sneak attack," said Rin as they all took off to help the other groups around the village. Back with Naruto and Yukari. The jutsu that Naruto had just used hit one of the tails on the armor. The armor froze all around before shattering into little pieces, leaving Yagura with slight frostbite and a completely frozen arm. "What did you just do?" asked Yagura, holding his arm. Naruto smirked at him. "Deep freeze jutsu. A combo of wind and water jutsu that results in an ice attack." "Although," said Naruto before he vanished and appeared behind Yagura before sending him into the air. "I prefer to use my hands," yelled Naruto, before he flashed again and lopped his arm off with a well-placed kick. Yagura yelled out in pain before he glared at his brother. Naruto then pulled back his left fist and sent Yagura to the ground. Naruto focused his power again and summoned all his strength. "Ice style. Deep freeze jutsu," yelled Naruto, letting loose a cannon of ice and snow from his mouth. The beam connected with Yagura, freezing yelled, before hitting the ground. Naruto landed and looked at Yagura. He was slowly freezing to death, but he was chuckling. "Good job, little brother. I was too weak to lead this new world, but you have all the power to do so. Become a god of this world, brother, and make me proud," said Yagura before a large dragon slammed into his frozen chest, breaking him apart. A few ninja appeared. The SSS, Kushina, Dan, Tsunade, Nawaki and the girls among them. Everyone looked at Yukari. She looked both deadly and beautiful in the crimson glow of the fire. Everyone knew that only the strongest of people could be the Mizukage. Naruto bowed to her, making her look at him as he took her right hand in his and kissed it. Yukari blushed at his actions. "All hail Yukari-sama, the new Mizukage," said Naruto, making her use all of her self-control not to hug him to her chest. "And then some," said Naruto as he smirked in his own mind. "Payback is a bitch, huh, Yukari?" thought Naruto, laughing slightly in his mind. 2 years later. "But he was always showing me a bit more love than you. Besides, Naruto's a man and I got the best set here," said Yukari. "No way. My Naruto-kun is an ass man the whole way and I got the best ass here," said Fu, showing off her firm ass to the others. Everyone began to argue about who would get the chance to be with him first. Rin sighed. She figured something like this would happen, so she came up with a plan. She whistled, gaining the attention of the girls, before she pulled out a small box. She opened it, revealing 4 pieces of paper. Naruto walked down the street and was getting many respectful bows and lustful looks. It was already known that he would be a member of the SSS, but it was kind of rigged. After all, he was related to a main member and he was friends with the Mizukage. He was heading over to the mansion as all of the members of the SSS and council had been called on. Naruto arrived at the mansion and was met by 2 members of the SSS. The first was a woman. She stood at 5 feet 7 inches, long silver that was pulled a bit to the side of her face, orange eyes, wore a black leather dominatrix-like suit that showed off her massive D-cup S, thigh-high black boots, shoulder pad, and a white cape that was attached to a shoulder armor. On a slanted black belt was a sword that was double-bladed. Her name was Delilah the Southern Mist. Standing next to her was a man who stood just at 5 feet 9 inches. He had long black hair, a full beard, gray eyes, wearing a gray noble coat, black noble pants, and boots. On his belt was a rapier. He was Gerald Cateran the IV. He was a descent of people who came from the western continents, but didn't say the name of the continuant. "Lady Delilah, Lord Gerald," said Naruto, taking Delilah's hand and kissing it while shaking Gerald's. Delilah smiled at Naruto. While her stances and clothes said one thing, her personality said something completely different. "You must be our newest member. I'm honored to meet you," said Delilah, giving Naruto a friendly kiss to the cheek. "Please, the honor is mine, Lady Delilah," said Naruto. "We should hurry to this meeting. Mizukage-sama has told us that we are to appear at the meeting," said Gerald. "Yes, I remember my mother saying the same thing," said Naruto. The 3 entered the building and headed for the council chambers. The chambers were built as a place where the first Mizukage held slaves. A few dozen of the current people in Mist were descendants of the first Mizukage. They entered the room and quickly located the other members of the SSS. Zabuza had on a black shirt, black pants, his headband tilted to the side, and boots. His mother had her hair pulled back into a ponytail. She had told him that she planned to cut it soon. She wore a white zip-up short-sleeve coat over a black long-sleeve shirt, and black baggy pants. On her side was her katana. A man who stood on the right and had a toothpick in his mouth. He stood at 5 feet 10 inches, short gray hair, and a beard, wore a black shirt, blue pants and white cape. He had 2 short swords stabbed to his sides. He was Gale. The last member was a young man who had brown hair, black frame glasses, wearing a vest with the Mist logo on it. A long-sleeve blue shirt with white strips. On his back was a double-handled sword. It was completely wrapped in tape. "Hello everyone," said Naruto, walking up to the last 3 members of the Mist's most deadly force. "Hello son," said Kushina. Gale nodded at Naruto. "How are you doing, boy?" asked Gale. Hello, Naruto-sama," said the man with black glasses. Naruto patted him on the shoulder. "Easy there, Chojuro. We are the same in ranking here, but also remember that I'm still a genin here," said Naruto, making Chojuro nod. Naruto, Fu, and Gurren had been made genin even though they didn't go to the academy like most others. They had mostly trained with Nawaki in the basics and Yukari had taught them in history. It was Yagura that had made them genin. He had even trained Naruto. Delilah smiled. "We'll have to change that soon," said Delilah. Naruto nodded. Even though she didn't look it, Delilah was the most skilled fighter in the group. She was also the current head of the group. Gerald smiled. The boy will attend the Chunin exams in due time, said Gerald. Zabuza smirked. When the Mizukage lets her pet off his leash, said Zabuza, making the members laugh and Chojuro blush at the implications that were being made. The doors opened and Yukari walked in, flanked by her advisors Tsunade and another person who Naruto had never seen. He looked around and noticed that most of the people in attendance were civilians, meaning that they ran the civilian side of things while they allowed her to handle the shinobi side of things. A large man stood up. "Why have you called us here today, Yukari-san?" asked the man. Naruto grabbed his hilt, but was stopped by Delilah. She knew just as well as he did that it was more about tradition than anything. Female ninja in this village were more like pleasure toys since the days of the first Mizukage. Yukari and Delilah had broken with that tradition. Yukari by being the first female Kage and Delilah being the head of the SSS. Yukari allowed her chakra to flare, making them remember that she wasn't just a pretty face, but a hard-boiled shinobi. "Remember, Jino-san, I'm the leader here, and with a snap of my fingers I can disband this council," said Yukari, never losing her smile. Jino backed up and nodded his head. "Yes ma'am," said Jino. "Good. As I was saying, we may have a problem. This initial was keep within Konoha and our spies there couldn't get out," said Yukari. "What do you mean, Mizukage-sama?" asked Kushina. "Konoha has been on lockdown for over 3 years now," said Yukari. "How did it escape our notice?" asked Zabuza. Zabuza may not have been the settled type, but even he would have noticed if something like that had gone down. "It's simple. 3 years ago Sarutobi was murdered, but classified as comatose. Fugaku Uchiha was elected to act as Hokage until Sarutobi came out of comatose. Sadly, all reports state that Sarutobi died 3 months ago when in fact he died 3 years ago during a minor coup," said Tsunade as she let a few tears fall. Yukari patted Tsunade's back. "Konoha went into martial law. The gates of the village close at 5:30 p.m. unless you're retuning from a mission. Nobody was to be out past 8 p.m. unless it is shinobi-related business. The Konoha military police has been given the authority to kill on sight as well as other things," said Yukari. Naruto stared at Yukari. "You're not telling us something," said Naruto, looking at her as did the others. Yukari looked at Naruto. "That's because the last bit of initial only need to be known by the members of the SSS, my advisors, and me. Additionally, we need to establish a power base with the other water nations. Water country is the dominating force within the water nations, but there are a few minor problems we need sorted out," said Yukari. "Like what?" asked Zabuza. "In Wave Gato, a long-time ally of our last Mizukage has started to cause wave problems. I can't have that, so I want him stopped. Kushina and Gerald will handle this one. Also, I will be heading to Tide Country to reinforce our alliance. Naruto and Delilah will be my escorts. The rest are to remain behind and defend the village." "Dismissed," said Yukari as Naruto and Delilah followed after her. As pre-strict code, all ninja in the mist carried a scroll as they were on call 24/7, even Genin. They left for the gate and ran into Fu, Guren, Karen, Haku, and Anko. "Hey, where are you guys going?" asked Anko. "A mission of peace with the land of tides," said Yukari. Karen smiled. "Alright Yu-chan. Ni-chan, you be a good boy and watch her," said Karen. Naruto smiled, before he kissed his sister on her forehead. "I always got her back," said Naruto. "And ass, and chest. Hell, my whole body is yours, Naruto-kun," thought Yukari while blushing. Delilah looked at her friend and boss, before smirking at her. "You're thinking about taking him to bed once we're done, right?" asked Delilah, making Yukari blush. No. Nothing like that, Delilah-chan," said Yukari, blushing. Delilah smiled. "Relax, Yukari-sama. You still get your fun time with Naruto, but this is a one-time deal for me." "Remember, I'm engaged," said Delilah. It was true. Delilah was to wed a noble's son who happened to be a ninja of mist. The noble had pulled some strings within her clan and she had been ordered to marry him. Yukari had tried to do something about it, but clan's laws stopped her from interfering unless it was for the sake of one of her ninja. "We should get going. It's a week-long boat ride to Tide," said Yukari as the 3 ninja left. Fu looked at them leaving and relzied that Yukari got to spend a week alone with Naruto. Fu told this to the others and they all screamed. 3 days later, the ship arrived in Tide's dock. Yukari and Delilah stepped out wearing their normal clothes, but both had a slight limp to their step. Naruto had the biggest grin on his face, and anyone with experience could tell you he had hit that. The city that they were in was pretty large, although it was another day's walk to the main city. The two leaders had agreed to meet in this city. A small guard of 10 samurai stood behind and around a man who wore noble robes. He was rather old, probably early 50s. At his side was two others. One was a young child of 7 and the other was an elder boy who looked around 20. He had a sword on his side. His eyes keep drifting towards Delilah and Yukari, giving them lustful smiles. Naruto put his hand on the katana sheath and was about to slice that punk up when Delilah stopped him. "Peace now, kill later," said Delilah as she too wanted to slash him into bite-sized pieces for staring at her like that. The aged man walked forward and bowed. "Greeting Mizukage-sama. It is a pleasure to meet you," said the elder. Yukari bowed her head slightly to show her respect. "It's my honor, sir," said Yukari. Before she brought her head back up. "These are my guards, Delilah of the Southern Mist and Naruto," said Yukari as they both bowed. The young boy looked at Naruto. "Wow, you look cool," yelled the boy. Naruto smiled at the boy. Whenever he was sent anywhere within the nations of water, he would spend a day around the children showing them sword tricks and jutsu. "Thank you, young one," said Naruto. The boy frowned at Naruto. "You're not that much older than me," said the boy, making Naruto laugh. "I guess you're right, little brother," said Naruto. The elder boy snorted, finally taking his eyes off of Yukari and Delilah. "You don't look so tough to me, street vermin. I bet that sword of yours is just for show," said the young man. Naruto glared at him, letting his eyes flash for a second. "Do you really want to find out if this sword is for show?" asked Naruto, putting his hand on the sheath. Yukari looked at Naruto. "Naruto, stand down," scolded Yukari. She didn't need anything happening today to break the peace. "Sajin, enough," yelled the elder man. "Hi," said the two, but their eyes never leaving each other. "The Lord and I have important matter to discuss. We will be at the town center," said Yukari as they made their way to the town center. Naruto and Delilah took to the rooftops on either side while the samurai followed below with the boys. They arrived at the town center and it was guarded by at least another 4 dozen elite samurai. The Lord of Tides entered the hall with the boys as well as Naruto and Delilah entering behind them. They went to the center of the building and sat. The young child sat in a chair while the other boy stood. As trained ninja, Naruto and Yukari flanked their cage. "Tell me, how has our sister land been doing lately?" asked Yukari. "We have been well, although we have had a few reports of a band of bandits led by ninja attacking from time to time. Nothing my guard can't handle, Mizukage-sama," said the lord. "Why not allow our ninja to help take care of it, my lord?" asked Delilah, looking at the old lord. Sajin looked at Delilah. "We have our own military might woman, so we don't need to go running for help whenever something happens," said Sajin. "Sajin, remember your place at this meeting," reprimanded the lord. Sajin looked down. "Hi, my lord," said Sajin. "That's not nice. Why can't everyone just get along?" asked the young boy. Yukari smiled at him. "We hurt each other, but no one knows why. Some say we are born violent. I say we chose the path of violence," said Yukari. Yukari smiled at the boy. "Do you think we're born violent?" asked Yukari. The young boy shook his head. "I think people chose to be bad, because they never learned how to be good," said the boy. "Wise words," said Naruto, closing his eyes. "May we please get back to the matter at hand?" asked Sajin. The two leaders began to talk about building a powerful alliance and future friendship. Later that Naruto stood on the balcony of his hotel room. The girls had already gone to bed and Naruto sat there with a cup of ramen and juice. He took a drink of his juice. He looked down and noticed a hooded figure running down the street. Naruto raised a brow at this. He looked and saw 2 guards in the other direction. The figure was running as if he had a meeting or something. Naruto ran down to the lobby where 2 guards were. "You two, did anyone leave here?" asked Naruto. "Yes, sir. His lord Sajin, we offered to call his escort, but he wanted to go alone. Maybe he had a date or something," said the first guard. "Did he have a cloak on?" asked Naruto. "No, sir. Is something happening that we should be aware of?" asked the other guard. Naruto growled. "I'm hoping not. You two alert the other guards. I think Sajin is planning something," said Naruto as he shot out the door. A little north of the city, Naruto had tailed Sajin to a small camp that housed about 140 bandits. He quickly clocked himself using a jutsu before he followed Sajin through the camp. Many of the bandits greeted Sajin like he was an old comrade returning. As they passed through the camp, Naruto left weighted up paper bombs to detonate on his mark. Naruto soon found that they were arriving in a large tent. Once Sajin entered, Naruto did the same. In the tent was a jonin from grass, and 3 chunin level nin. "So boss, what's the word?" asked the jonin looking at Sajin. Sajin removed his cloak and slammed his fist into a table. "Damn old fool of a lord. He's brought the Mizukage as well as the leader of the SSS. Both lovely women. You will all attack the village in half an hour. I'm sure that the Mizukage and the leader of the SSS will personally guard my family. Once we're out of the village, I'll use those special darts to knock them out. With those special chakra collars we all have 2 slaves to pleasure me," said Sajin. Naruto had heard enough. He snapped his fingers and the bombs went off. All the leaders ran out of the tent while Naruto decloaked himself. He drew his sword, making it revert back to its true form. He shouldered the blade and walked out the tent. A bandit that was running past Naruto was close-lined, breaking his neck. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at Naruto, who was grinning. Sajin looked at them. "I should have known I was followed," growled out Sajin. Naruto slammed his sword into the ground and glared at Sajin, before holding up 2 fingers. 1. You talked bad about Yukari-sama and Delilah-sama, so I had to kill you, and 2. She wasn't the only swordsman to come with Yukari-sama today, said Naruto. Sajin paled as he stepped back in fear. "Don't just stand there. Attack him," yelled Sajin. The bandits charged at Naruto and he looked ready for a fight. Naruto charged Kyuubi's chakra to the seal on his sword, before unleashing a hellish wave of ice that froze the area. The Jonin, Chunins, and Sajin were alright, but Naruto just smirked at them. He held his sword with both hands and it was facing them. "I'm going to enjoy killing you guys," said Naruto, glaring at them. Killjoy walked down the hall whistling. He had pulled patrol duty today and he was bored. The Chunins charged at Naruto and Naruto grinned. It would be pretty easy for him to kill them all without a problem, but that wasn't any fun. All 3 began a melee of combat on Naruto. Naruto began to dance around their attacks with little effort on his part. After a few minutes of this he grew bored and slashed one of the men's arms off. The man screamed in pain. "I cut an artery in his arm. He has just over 3 minutes to live," said Naruto as he flung the blood off his sword. "Bastard. Water style. Water bullet jutsu," yelled the man. "Lightning style. Lightning hound jutsu," yelled the man as a large hound charged along the water. Naruto glared at the 2 attacks, before he batted the water bullet away with his sword while using his seal to make some wind chakra. Naruto slashed and destroyed the hound. He charged at the 2 of them, before killing them both with a single slash of his sword. The Jonin of the group was no fool. He knew that that boy was far from a pushover. He pulled out his own blade and charged at Naruto. Naruto started at him, but he wasn't in the mood to really fight after his light workout. He started his hand signs and aimed his sword. "Ice style. Deep freeze jutsu," yelled Naruto, firing a beam of pure white at the Jonin. The Jonin didn't expect this and was flash frozen. Naruto laughed as he sheathed his sword. He walked up to the Jonin and thumped the ice cube. A small crack appeared before it broke into many pieces. Naruto looked at Sajin as he began to back up. Naruto walked closed and Sajin knew that he was dead. He pulled out a hidden knife and put it to his throat. Naruto pulled a kunai and threw it, disarming Sajin, before he punched him hard enough to nearly knock him cold. "For what you said I should end your life, but I'm not," said Naruto as he pulled out some wire and wrapped it around Sajin. "I'll kill you after they pass judgment." Naruto began to drag Sajin back to the village, and before they knew it they were at the village in front of the Lord. Naruto explained what had happened and Sajin's part in the whole thing. Sajin denied the charges, but the Lord heard none of it. Sajin was going to be executed within a few days' time, but none of the ninja would see it. Back in Mist a month later. After returning from Tide, things had sped up greatly for the village. The Mist's forces had become stronger, putting them up there with Konoha. The SSS had been started to take up apprentices, but in Naruto's case he was put on a genin team with Fu and Gurren. Their team leader was Delilah. When Naruto had returned he had to take each and every one of the girls for a solo date. Anko was the most exotic as they stayed in her room the whole night. a while after they had found out about Naruto having a threesome with Yukari and Delilah. Most of the girls were pissed, but Anko had the biggest grin on her face. Naruto still wasn't sure what it meant. Naruto was heading over to the tower as there was nothing to do. He had skipped out on training as he was just as strong as the others. He was looking for a mission to do. His team had taken to training today. Konoha. Fugaku looked into the cell of the one person that tried to destroy him and his plans. He had been more loyal to the village than to the clan. For that he lost his right eye after he attacked his father. Itachi Uchiha would spend the rest of his life in the chains of betrayal. "Why did you do it, Itachi?" asked Fugaku. As his Anbu guarded him. Itachi looked at his father and glared with his single eye. Even though he lost his eye, he was still a formidable opponent as he never used his Sharingan to train. His hair was longer than it had been before and messy, his face was still sharp, his single black eye stared into his father's. The lines under his eyes long and showing that he got little sleep from his days in the Anbu. A few scars appeared on his arms and chest from the touchier he had to endure day after day. He wore a pair of gray pants. His hands were heavily chained as were his feet. "I did it because you planned to enslave the village. It was my duty to protect it," said Itachi, thinking about the love he had left behind to do his duty. Fugaku shook his head. "I can't believe you, Itachi. I had such high hopes for you," said Fugaku as he and his Anbu began to leave. "Once you come to your senses, my son, you'll be free. Until then, enjoy this darkness," said Fugaku as they sealed the door. Itachi pulled out a hidden locket that was given to him by the love of his life. It was oval-shaped and gold. He opened it and gazed at the picture inside. It was of Ayame. She had long brown hair, brown eyes, and an innocent laugh that he could still hear even within the confines of his cell. It had been a long time since he had been in her. Months, years maybe. All he knew was that his love for her had not changed in the slightest. "Ayame, I promise that I'll get free. I'll save you in this village," said Itachi as he walked up to a pull-up bar and began to do chin-ups. Even if he was imprisoned, he was still a soldier at heart. 2 years later, Naruto walked into a meeting with his team as the council talked. It appeared that it was over the Chunin exams as well as another matter. "I will not leave him locked up," yelled Kushina as she glared at Yukari. "There's nothing we can do about what happened to him. So forget about him, Kushina," yelled Yukari. "Forget about him? You expect me to forget about my student?" yelled Kushina, slamming her hand down. "Yes, I'm not going to risk our village for the sake of one man," yelled Yukari. Naruto walked up to Gerald. "What's happening, Gerald?" asked Naruto, looking the man. Gerald looked at Naruto. "It seems that Kushina has discovered that an old student of hers is locked up in Konoha." "Itachi Uchiha," said Gerald. Naruto looked shocked. He remembered Itachi. Itachi treated him and his sister like siblings. He always visited them when he had free time. "Yukari-sama, I have a proposal," said Naruto, stopping the two as they were about to come to blows. "What is it, swordsman Naruto?" asked Yukari, who was in no mood for games right now. "Word though the spy network around the nations is that Sound and Suna are planning an invasion on Konoha," said Naruto. "So what?" said Yukari. "If we can free Itachi and get him into power as the Hokage, then we'll have an airtight treaty with Konoha," said Naruto. "It's risky," said Yukari. "I know. That's why the SSS will lead this mission, and if we fail you can say that you had knowledge that we had been planning to stage a coup after the exams ended," said Kushina. Yukari bit her lip. The pros and cons seemed to be the same, damned if they do and failed, damned if they don't. "I won't take any chances. Wait until we've had time to think about it. You should know by the 3rd exam. Also your team will be attending the Chunin exams. However, Naruto will not take his sword with you," said Yukari. "What?" asked Naruto, looking at Yukari. "Face it, all anyone knows about the 7th swordsman is that he uses a large buster blade. Other than that nothing is known," said Yukari. Naruto sighed, before pulling off his sheath and handing it to his mother for safekeeping. In return he was given a katana. He strapped it to his right side. "When do we leave?" asked Naruto. "You leave now. A boat is waiting to take you and the other 4 teams to the Chunin exams," said Yukari. Delilah, Fu, Gurren, and Naruto bowed, before they walked out. Yukari stood up and prepared to leave. She had other things to attend to today. Outside, Delilah and the other senseis met up just outside the tower. Haku and Karen would be participating as well. They would be fighting with a boy named Kimimaro as a member of their team. At a young age his clan had been wiped out by an attack. He had been in a cell when he was found. Tsunade had discovered that he had an advanced form of lung cancer that was breaking down his whole body, but she had been able to cure him. Naruto, Fu, and Gurren walked up to them. They turned and smiled. Karen walked up to Naruto and gave him a hug. "Ni-san, it's been a while," said Karen. "Sorry Karen nay. You know my duties keep me busy." "Like Haku keeps you busy at night," said Naruto, smirking at her and earning a slap to the arm. Haku was blushing. "That's enough Naruto-kun," said Haku. "What about you hooking up with Delilah-sensei in tides?" asked Karen with a grin. Even though she rarely saw her elder brother nowadays, they still got along great. Fu grinned. "What's the matter Haku-chan? You're not embarrassed, are you?" asked Fu as she looked at the blushing Haku. Haku blushed harder. "And no," said Haku looking down. Gurren patted her back. "Leave the poor girl alone. I mean it's bad enough she's a screamer, with the way Karen squeezes her nice juicy ass, and eats her out, but come on," said Gurren, making Haku hide her face in her hand with her blush. "That's enough harassing my teammate," said Kimimaro, trying to hide his own blushing face. "Line up in your respective teams," said Delilah. The teams lined up perfectly. "Alright kids, this is going to be the real deal. Once in this exam you'd better be ready to fight for your lives. Remember you are delegates of the Hidden Mist and more importantly Water Country. Show that you have power, and if anyone gives you hell, show them why we were once hailed as the Bloody Mist," said Delilah in a strong commanding voice with the other senseis flanking her. "Hi Delilah-sama," yelled the genin. "Move out," yelled Delilah as they set out to the boat. 2 weeks later, Konoha. The groups had traveled for a week and arrived at the arranged point with their Konoha escorts. They quickly moved to Konoha and arrived a week later. A large group of bandits had tried to attack them, but the ninjas easily dispatched them, all while trying to get a glance of the Mist's ninja's skill level. As they approached Konoha, Karen started to shiver. Naruto put his arm around his sister to comfort her, while Haku gave her a hug. They entered the village gates and were taken to the Hokage Tower. They entered a large room. They could easily hold another 40 people before walking up to his desk. Fugaku looked at them, before nodding. "I see that Mist has sent 5 teams this year," said Fugaku. Delilah nodded. "Yes sir. These are their papers and everything is in order," said Delilah. Fugaku quickly scanned them, before he encountered 2 of interest. Naruto Uzumaki and Karen Uzumaki. So that's where she disappeared to. Maybe I can still get what I want. The power of the Uzumaki into the Uchiha clan. And I know just how to do it, thought Fugaku. "Yes, everything is in order. I will see you later," said Fugaku as an Anbu appeared and escorted them to their hotel. Fugaku got up and looked at Danzo. "Please see to the rest of our guests. I have something to discuss with my wife," said Fugaku. Danzo nodded, before Fugaku vanished. Danzo snorted at the younger man. "Fool, thinking about your clan when you need to think about the big picture," said Danzo as an large group appeared inside the room. Uchiha District. Makoto Uchiha looked down at the ground. She was 28 years old, long black hair, angelic face, black eyes, long slender legs, and large C-cup S, wearing an open kimono and shorts. She was inside her room at the clan home. Nobody knew this, but she rarely slept in Fugaku's bed. She didn't love him, she only ever married him out of duty. She gave birth to her 2 sons as she didn't think of Fugaku as a father to them. She was brought out of her thoughts as Fugaku entered her room. This was strange as he normally sleep with some young Uchiha girl of 19 or 20. "What do you want?" asked Makoto, only to be slapped hard enough to hit the ground. "This that any way to talk to your husband, slut?" asked Fugaku, enjoying the tears that started to fall because of that little remainder. After she had given birth to Itachi and Sasuke, Fugaku gave her to other Uchiha men as to remind her of her place, when they had flat out raped her. Fugaku had watched in sick amusement as he had his way with her elder sister. "What do you want, Fugaku-sama?" asked Makoto with venom in her voice and ice in her eyes. Fugaku patted her head. "You are to sleep with and get pregnant by Naruto Uzumaki. I have already assigned Sasuke to try and get Karen Uzumaki pregnant. You will not fail or the punishment will be dire," said Fugaku, activating his Sharingan, making her realize he was serious. "Hi," said Makoto as Fugaku walked out. Makoto got up and began to fix her clothes and hair. She had an Uzumaki to find. A few hours later, Karen and Naruto had decided to head out to dinner. They had told everyone that it was just a brother-sister thing, as they hadn't had time to talk in a long time. Karen hung off Naruto's arm and they laughed together. Many men glared at Naruto for having such a cute woman on his arm, while the girls drooled over him and glared at Karen. Naruto and Karen ignored them in favor of speaking with each other. Until they came to a lovely restaurant. They entered it and took a seat on the second floor. A waiter quickly came over and glanced at Karen. He gave her a once-over. She had dressed for the occasion. She wore a long blue and green kimono that was fully closed and sandals. He was stopped from looking by a very annoyed and very protective brother. Naruto grabbed the man by the back of his jacket, lifted him into the air and slammed him onto the table. Naruto looked at the man dead in the eye. "Look at my sister like that again and I'm taking your eyes out. Do you understand me?" asked Naruto. The waiter nodded before Naruto let him up. "What can I get for you?" asked the man, being weary of what he said. "I'll have Beijing beef and orange chicken with a side of rice and sake," said Naruto. "I'll have some grilled squid and crab, with a side of soy, as well as green tea," said Karen. The waiter nodded, before he began to walk away, only for Naruto to grab his arm. "If you or any of your people spit in my food, I'm not going to be a very happy person," said Naruto, making the man leave as quickly as possible. Karen laughed. "Ni-san, you made him nearly piss himself," said Karen. Naruto smirked at her. "Nobody looks at my baby sister like that and not expect to nearly shit themselves," said Naruto. "True," said Karen as the waiter returned with their food. After the food arrived, they ate and talked in a comfortable way. After they finished, they decided to head back. After they returned, Karen prepared to go to sleep, while Naruto decided to hit the town and bars. Since he held rank over everyone except Delilah, he could stay out until midnight. He left after telling Delilah and headed out. He looked at his watch and saw that it was only 10 p.m., giving him plenty of time to find a bar. He found a bar for ninja and civilians alike and quickly took a seat at the bar. He ordered a drink and took a few gulps. He knew Kyuubi would purge his system at a moment's notice, but until then he was getting a bit of a buzz. Halfway through his 5th bottle, he received a glass of wine. He looked at the bartender. "What's this for?" asked Naruto. "Compliments of the lady in the corner," said the bartender. Naruto looked over and noticed the woman. Her hair was pulled into a braid about midway down. She wore a little blue number that showed off her assets, and on her feet were blue heels. Naruto let his eyes drift to aura mode. He quickly read her aura. It looked rose red, but it had cracks in it. "She finds me attractive, but she's doing this against her will. And the cracks means she's in pain and needs help, but I can't push it," thought Naruto as he grabbed his drink and walked over to her. "Hello miss," started Naruto. "Makoto. My name is Makoto, and you are?" asked Makoto, eyeing Naruto with a hint of lust. "She's a good actor," thought Naruto. "Naruto," said Naruto. "Well Naruto, what say you and I leave this place? We can go to my home where two people can have loads of fun," said Makoto. Naruto quickly noticed that a gang of Uchiha looked ready to move when they did. Naruto was starting to get the picture. He agreed and they left. They walked down many streets before coming to an apartment in the civilian section of Konoha. Makoto led Naruto into her apartment. It was cozy. It had blue walls and a comfy little couch. Makoto sat on the couch with her legs crossed. "How do you want to do this, stud?" asked Makoto. Naruto looked around, before flaring his chakra a bit. "Alright, you can drop the act, we're safe from praying eyes and ears, so you can be yourself," said Naruto using only his lips. Makoto looked at him for a second. "What about the Uchiha watching us?" asked Makoto. "They're reporting to the Hokage about you snagging me and taking me to your home," said Naruto. Makoto leaned back. "Oh thank Kami," said Makoto. "Not that I'm complaining about the Y woman before me, but what the hell is going on?" asked Naruto, removing his jacket and taking a seat. Makoto walked over to her mini fridge and pulled out a bottle of green tea. "It's like this, Naruto. My husband Fugaku, head of both the Uchiha clan and Hokage of this village, has a thing for clan power. So he figures that the more powerful the blood in our family, the greater our power," said Makoto, taking a sip. "What does that have to do with me?" asked Naruto. "He wants the blood of the Uzumaki clan in our own. I was to become impregnated by you," said Makoto, taking a sip. Naruto looked at her. Why didn't he send another girl instead of you? Asked Naruto. Makoto smiled a sad smile. We were married for honor and duty, never love. Fugaku was the strongest of the clan at the time and I was the daughter of the clan head. It was only natural. We never loved each other. I only sleep with him 3 times. The night of our marriage and the days our sons were conceived. I hate him with all the hate I can muster. I want to free my eldest boy and leave this place, said Makoto. Naruto looked at her. He wasn't sure, but he knew that she could be trusted. What if I told you I was on a mission to not only free you, but your son as well? Said Naruto. I would say tell me more, Naruto, said Makoto. Naruto looked at his watch and sighed. I can't. I have to go. It's 11:45 p.m. and I still have to return to my hotel. Don't worry. I'll leave a clone here so it can explain things. It has enough chakra to last until noon. It will leave at 9 a.m., said Naruto, making blank copies. What are these, Naruto? Asked Makoto. Naruto began to pump chakra into one of the blank things. Drone clones. A blank clone that when a person puts chakra and a smear of their blood on it, it becomes that person for all purposes. I has a mental link to the real person is to control them a bit. They last 5 days even when fighting, spying, distraction, and escape, said Naruto, smearing his blood on the clone. Pretty damn useful clone, said Makoto. Did the same, before they both left the room, only to hear moans and groans a second later. Makoto blushed and Naruto laughed. I'm so glad that the effects don't transfer back, but you'll love the memories, said Naruto as they quickly left the apartment, and just in time as the Uchiha that had watched them earlier had arrived to monitor them. They arrived at the apartment and Naruto quickly pushed her in. Delilah was sitting on the couch reading in only a baggy shirt. Now if you wanted to have some fun all you had to do is ask, said Delilah as she looked at Naruto. Naruto looked at her with all playfulness gone. We need to talk, said Naruto. Delilah stood up. What about? Asked Delilah. It seems that Fugaku is intent on getting the Uzumaki bloodline into the Uchiha bloodline, said Naruto. Where did you get this info? Asked Delilah. From me. Fugaku's ex-wife Makoto Uchiha, said Makoto. From the way she said ex she meant it, thought Delilah. Anything else? Asked Delilah. Not that I'm aware of, but I'm sure that he's going to try something with Karen during the exams. Tell Yukari and the other swords should be on standby, just in case, said Naruto. Good idea, but what should we tell your sister and the others? Asked Delilah. Naruto looked out the window. The truth. These exams are far more deadly for us now than when we walked into the village, said Naruto, closing his eyes. We're fine, sorry I never got your name, said Tenten, blushing while looking at the man before her. Naruto smiled. Sorry about that. I'm Naruto, said Naruto, shaking their hands. Tenten nodded and shook his hand. I'm Tenten, said Tenten. And I'm Rock Lee, said Lee. You have some skill, came a voice from behind them. The mist genin turned to see a boy with long black hair and pale eyes. Kimimaro narrowed his eyes and let a small knife-shaped bone into his hand. This genin put him on the defensive. Maybe it was the fact that he was a Hyuga. Who are you? Asked Karen as she crossed her arms over her chest. The way he looked at her was creepy. As if he was staring into her soul. My name Neji Hyuga of the Hyuga clan, said the boy, walking closer to Naruto. Naruto narrowed his eyes. Is your name supposed to mean something, Hyufa? Asked Fu, not liking this guy too much. Neji turned to her and smirked. Nothing at all, said Neji as he and his teammates walked away. Kimimaro looked at Naruto. I think enough people have seen you for now, we need to hurry to the exam room, said Kimimaro. Fu, Naruto, and Gurren nodded. Just outside Anbu headquarters, 3 figures in pure black robes with helmets on looked at the building. The only difference was the color of the trim on the robes. Pure black in the center, red was on the trim on the right, and last was blue. All 3 wielded katanas. Are you ready? Asked the center one. The one on the left pulled the katana from its sheath. Do you even need to ask that, Kuro? Said left as she charged the door and opened it with a kick. An Anbu on duty looked at her for only a second before steel meat flesh. Blood sprayed the wall. The woman flicked blood off her katana before the other 2 walked in. Blue walked up and checked for a plush. Was that necessary, Red? Asked Blue. Yes. He could have been a threat later, said Red as the other 2 unsheathed their katanas. Let's move. We need to finish this within the next hour and a half, said Kuro. The two nodded before they rushed down the halls. They knew that only a few people were in the building as everyone else was either guarding the Hokage, on a mission, not in uniform and doing something else, or overlooking the teachers at the academy. Blue walked towards the guard area and opened the door. Once the door was open, she quickly moved her head as a kunai came flying towards her. A Anbu came out of the room with a sword in hand and slashed at Blue. Blue blocked the attack, before she pushed forward with her strength and slashed clean through the blade and chopping his head off. "That was sloppy, Blue," said Red. Blue looked at Red as if glaring at her. "Save it, bitch," said Blue. They began to look through files, for any mention of their target. Papers were scattered all over the ground, desks destroyed and computers searched though. Red slammed her hand on a desk. "Damn, nothing," said Red. Kuro looked around and then began to tap the walls. It was an old trick he learned from a mentor. By hitting a wall and listening, you could find different waves and find what you were looking for. Kuro tapped a few more times, before he hit something that sounded like metal. "And bingo was his nameo," said Kuro as he slashed the wall. A steel plate fell and sitting in the vault was what appeared to be a black book. Kuro picked it up and opened it. Inside was a list of Konoha's worst and where they were held. Kuro read though until he found the name he was looking for. He slammed it closed. "Well?" asked Red. "He's being held on level 4 cell block E in cell number 20, said Kuro, burning the files after he was done. Blue whistled. "Only the baddest of the bad are sent to that cell block in that level," said Blue. Red was about to respond when she heard footsteps. "I thought we took care of the guards," said Red. Kuro looked over at the man laying on the ground. He grabbed his right hand and found that he had a trigger. The bastard used a remote to tell the guards here that there were intruders. "We need to hurry. Is there a quicker way into the cell block?" asked Kuro as Blue finished trapping the door with a few dozen explosive notes. Red walked over to a bookcase and pulled out the book on the far left on the second shelf. It slid open, revealing a number of stairs. "An old passage that was left out of the newer blueprints when it was remodeled the building," said Red as she walked into the hidden passage. "Too bad for them," said Blue. Even though you couldn't see it, you could hear the smirk in her voice. She and Kuro quickly followed before sealing the door. Kuro lit a touch and they walked down the stairs. "When do you think they'll open the door?" asked Kuro. Blue held up her fingers and counted from 3, 2, 1. Boom! A large explosion shook the home of Anbu. They quickly rushed down the passage as they knew that would get someone's attention. They rushed into level 4 and quickly into cell block E. They were close to the cell when someone jumped out and slashed at Kuro. Kuro blocked with his sword, before he stared at the person who slashed him. The man stood as tall as him, wore a black vest, blue pants, and in his hand was a sword that looked nicked and battered from many a battle. Kuro looked at the man. His eyes held a crazed expression. The expressions of someone who enjoyed killing too much. Arc de Force. A killer who was said to be executed for killing his own team during a mission to murder the Lord of Grass. Killed 300 people to get the job done and burned the capital of Grass to the ground, said Kuro, his grip tightened on his sword. Arc laughed, before licking his blade. "It was actually 362, but who's counting?" said Arc. The girls ran forward. "Stop. Get the target. This won't take me more than 2 minutes, said Kuro. Blue nodded, before she and Red ran forward to get the target. Arc looked at his opponent, before he seemed to vanish from sight. He was bouncing around the room. He appeared for a second and slashed Kuro's arm. Kuro grunted in slight pain. Arc resumed his bouncing and slashed Kuro a few more times, leaving Kuro to bleed. "What's the matter? Are you so scared that you can't move?" laughed Arc, licking his blade. "No, I just wanted to see your technique. You use speed to hide your movements, but because you're moving so fast the hits aren't as deep as they could be. You have to contently attack or you're a dead man. In a closed space, however, the wounds are much deeper, perfect for an assassin," said Kuro. Arc appeared standing 15 feet from Kuro. "Impressive that you figured it out, having only seen it in action once, but I'm just as good with my true killer attack," yelled Arc as he charged forward with his sword to the side. Kuro focused his sights and saw the man standing before him. He raised his sword in the air, before slashing down and right through the chest of Arc. "You were good, but to let a madman wield a sword is unforgivable, and to let that sword continue to cry is even worse than it already is," said Kuro, as he twisted the blade and pulled it out, letting Arc fall to the ground to bleed to death. Kuro cleaned the blood off his sword. Before he entered the cell block, he walked to the end and saw that Blue and Red had already freed the target. "Let's go," said Red, putting her hand on Kuro, before they all teleported away. A few minutes later, Fugaku arrived at the scene and was pissed off. They had kidnapped the one person Fugaku wanted on his side the most. Itachi Uchiha. Just outside the village. Once they landed, Blue and Red quickly got the man out the chains. Itachi slowly stood up, before falling down. Red caught him. "Easy there, cowboy. You've been through one hell of an ordeal," said Red. Itachi wanted to talk, but his throat was so dry. Kuro pulled out a bottle of water and helped Itachi drink it. Itachi guzzled it too fast and ended up coughing. "Don't drink too fast. You need to let it soothe your throat," said Blue. Itachi nodded and did as instructed. After he felt a little better and stood up. His body was a bit out of shape, but was still strong. Itachi flexed his muscles before he smashed his leg into a rock. The rock had a large dent where there should have been dirt. Kuro cut Itachi's chains and Itachi rubbed his hands. "Thank you for freeing me, but who the hell are you people?" said Itachi, only to get slapped upside the head. "Honestly, Itachi-kunai, though I taught you better than that," said Red, removing her mask, reviling Kushina Uzumaki, winking at Itachi. Itachi was shocked, and it was showing on his almost always static face. "Kei Kushina-sensei," said Itachi, staring at Kushina with his mouth open. Kushina closed his mouth. "That's rude, Itachi," said Kushina. Naruto looked at Itachi. "Listing, you need to get out of here now, before things get bad. We already sprigged up, so head over to Wave. From there you'll meet our guard. They should get you to Mist safely," said Naruto. Itachi bowed. "Thank you, Naruto-san." "Kushina-sensei," said Itachi before he vanished. Delilah whistled. "It seems he never lost any strength," said Delilah. Kushina frowned. "You're wrong. He's not the same Itachi. He no longer has his old strength," said Kushina. "Come on. I have to get back to the exam. I'm sure our clones are almost gone," said Naruto as they throw out smoke bombs. When the smoke cleared, they were gone. The Forest of Death. Naruto stood in the back with Yugito and Gurren as they prepared to enter the forest. Karen, Haku, and Kimimaro stood close to them. The Jonin from before. Anko, if he was correct, was telling them what needed to be done in order to pass. They also had to sign varies in order to enter, as Konoha was not to be responsible for any fatalities that happened. Naruto and Kimimaro walked away from their teams and stood under a tree. "Naruto-sama, did you feel what I just felt?" asked Kimimaro, looking around. "If you're talking about the eyes on me and my sister, then yes, I did. Kimimaro, I love you like a brother with my life, so I'm begging you to protect my sister from harm," said Naruto, bowing to Kimimaro. Kimimaro blushed from embarrassment. "Please don't bow before me, Naruto-sama. I'll protect her with my life, because she is my friend," said Kimimaro. Naruto stood up straight. "That's all I needed to know," said Naruto. 20 minutes later, Naruto found himself in the forest with his teammates behind him. They had been running for the better part of 20 minutes when they stopped. Naruto clenching his fist, making the other two stop. Yugito landed behind him and soon sniffed the air. "Well, what do you have, kitty?" asked Gurren. "We have a team to the west about 40 meters, a team to the northwest by 50 and another team to the southeast by a mile," said Yugito. "I see. Yugito, take the team to the west. Gurren, take the team to the northwest. I'll take the team to the southeast. We meet back in this stop in 4 hours," said Naruto as they all spread out. With Naruto had run for over a good 30 minutes and found his targets. It was a team of Konoha ninja. They were a good 20 feet away. The leader had his head wrapped, while the other two had swords. He jumped down and looked at them. "Excuse me, but do any of you have a heaven scroll on you?" asked Naruto. The leader turned around and glared at Naruto. "Who do you think you are trying to take a whole team by yourself?" asked the leader. Naruto didn't answer as the other two charged at Naruto, swords drawn. They appeared on Naruto's sides and Naruto used his sheathed sword and stopped the attack without trying. Naruto then used a powerful palm strike to send the two of them flying into a tree, knocking them out. "What weaklings," said Naruto. "Ha, you're right. But I'm on a whole other level," said the leader as he ran through hand signs. "Fire style. Exploding kick," yelled the leader. Naruto narrowed his eyes and charged forward. He got under the leader's guard and used his own kick to knock the leaders up, resulting in a massive explosion. Naruto then brought his sheathed sword down on his head hard enough to knock him out. Naruto took some wire and tied them up by their feet, fingers, bodies and hands. He was going to make it hell for them to get out of that trap. Naruto then searched their bodies and found what he was looking for. It was a earth scroll. Naruto pocketed the scroll and jumped into the trees, before heading towards another team. 2 hours later, Naruto had reveled 5 teams of their scrolls so far. He had just stopped for a break, but had to jump as a few kunai impaled the tree. Naruto looked up and saw who had thrown them. It was a girl of 18. She stood at 5 feet 6 inches, brown hair pulled into 2 buns, brown eyes, angel-like face, large D cup S, wearing a white shirt that clung to her body with large loose sleeves, black gloves without the fingers, long red pants, large yellow sash, and strapped shoes. In her left hand was a katana. "You're that girl from before," said Naruto, looking at her in greater detail than before. "And you're the guy that helped me out before. Sorry, this is nothing personal. Give me your scroll or I'll cut you in two," said the girl. Naruto unsheathed his katana and held it in his left hand. "Do I get to know the full name of the woman who plans to take my head?" asked Naruto, looking at her with lowered eyes. "Tenten Gecko," said Tenten. "Then I am Naruto Uzumaki," said Naruto. Tenten charged at Naruto and brought the sword down in a killing strike. Naruto parried the strike with little effort. Tenten spun around and thrust the sword forward, hoping to catch Naruto off guard as the thrust was aimed at his right shoulder. Naruto once again parried the attack, before the struck the ground, sending rocks, dirt, and Tenten flying. Tenten hit a tree, but quickly bounced off it, before she started to thrust her sword at Naruto. Naruto dodged the attacks, before his back hit a tree. Tenten used this to her advantage and stabbed at Naruto. The blade went through Naruto's chest, just above his heart. Tenten smirked at the fact that the fight was already over. "Sorry about killing you. You were kind of cute, blondie. I would have bet my Y-ass that you would have won," said Tenten. "Still want to bet that Y-ass of yours?" asked Naruto, smirking at Tenten. Tenten looked up and was shocked. "How?" asked Tenten. Naruto grabbed the sword with his right hand, cutting it open slightly, before he pulled Tenten's sword out. He threw her to the side. Naruto sighed before looking at Tenten. "I'm the warming up, let's get this party started," said Naruto. Tenten charged at Naruto, but instead of parrying it like he had before, he completely stopped the attack. Naruto slashed upwards and destroyed most of her clothes, breaking her sword in 3 pieces, and leaving small cuts all over her body. Tenten blushed and covered her body. "I can't believe I was defeated so easily," thought Tenten. "You fight well. You also have a nice body." "Here," said Naruto, throwing her a scroll with a robe in it. "Come fight me again when you have the strength," said Naruto as he began to walk away. "Hey, wait," yelled Tenten, stopping Naruto. Naruto turned to her, making her blush. "It's tradition in my clan that a warrior who is the slave of the one who defeated them if they haven't been killed. I'm here to do with as you please, Naruto-sama," said Tenten, bowing her head. Naruto scratched the back of his head. "What's with the clans of Konoha and your weird-ass traditions? I don't need a slave, so you're free," said Naruto, making Tenten's eyes widen. Tenten put a hand on the ground. "You can't. If you walk away, honor of my clan demands that I commit seppuku. Please take me as your vassal, at least I don't want to die," yelled Tenten with tears in her eyes as she crawled up to Naruto. Naruto sighed. "What's with all these women? Next thing I know, my own sister will be wanted me to share a bed with her," thought Naruto. "All right, Tenten. I'll take you as you ask, but I will only keep you around until you are able to defeat me in one-on-one combat." "Agreed?" said Naruto. Tenten smiled. "Thank you, Naruto-sama," said Tenten as she unsealed the long blue robe and tight black pants that hugged her legs. "Take this as well," said Naruto, handing her a scroll, said Naruto. "Hi, Naruto-sama," said Tenten, taking off. Naruto sighed and sheathed his sword and began to walk away when he felt it. A sinister chakra. Naruto turned his head in the direction it came from and began to focus on the area. He felt 7 chakras. His eyes widened when he felt his sister's chakra. Naruto allowed his chakra to flare to max. "Someone is going to die," yelled Naruto as he unsheathed his sword and ran right at the area. 20 minutes ago. Karen sighed as she and her team stopped for a rest. They had only run into one team and Kimimaro had taken them out easily enough. They had set up traps to detour any teams from attacking them. "What's our next move, Karen?" asked Haku using her handling the fire. "We need to meet up with Nisama. Once we met up with him we can advance relatively easy," said Karen. Kimimaro was about to add something in when he made a bone sword appear in his hand. Haku and Karen knew what was about to happen, so they quickly got to their feet. Karen pulled her saber, while Haku pulled out her senbon needles. "Fire style. Fireball jutsu," yelled someone not far off. Haku jumped in front of her teammates and ran the one-handed signs. "Water style. Water wall jutsu," yelled Haku, making a wall of water appear from the nearby river. "That was impressive," said Sasuke as he came out of the shadows with his two teammates. "But you will be mine." "Shut up, brother. We have a mission from Tusama," said a young girl. She looked to be around 16 or 17 years old, standing at 5 feet 6 inches, C-cup S, long black hair, black eyes, long red robe that was partially open at the stomach with black trappings on her shoulder, long tight black pants. "We should hurry this up," said a boy who looked like Sasuke. On his back was a sword. "We are Team 7. This is my sister Tokiko and my squad member Sai. Kimimaro, Haku. Attack pattern Delta," yelled Karen, charging at Tokiko. Tokiko awaited the attack and moved to the side as gracefully as an exotic dancer. She grabbed Karen's arm and twisted it behind Karen's back. Karen dropped her sword as a sharp pain ripped through her arm. Karen flipped to the side and kicked Tokiko in the gut. Tokiko let go and Karen flipped away while throwing knives. Tokiko took out a kunai knife and blocked all of them. Karen landed sideways on a tree and started to perform hand signs. Ox, bird, tiger, snake, horse, dog, ram, rat. Water style. Senbon rain jutsu, yelled Karen. The water around Tokiko hardened into needles and fired at Tokiko. Tokiko realized that she wouldn't avoid them all if she didn't activate her bloodline limit. Sharingan, yelled Tokiko, closing her eyes and quickly opening them, revealing blood-red eyes with 2 tome in each. She jumped out the way pf the needles, but her cheek was still slightly scratched. Karen smirked as she retrieved her katana. "Fist blood belongs to me," said Karen. "But last blood shall be mine," yelled Tokiko, charging in with intent to kill. Sai had tried getting close to the Haku girl, but every time he did she would repel him with a series of needles and taijutsu. They were currently dead-locked with Haku holding his sword back. Haku jumped and prepared a jutsu that Naruto had helped her with. "Ice style. Frozen fist," yelled Haku as she vanished in pure speed. Sai's eyes widened. He jumped to the side at the last second, but his arm was completely numbed from the hit. Sai fell to his knees as the creeping cold began to set in. Sai glared at Haku. "You fucking whore, what did you do to my arm?" yelled Sai. "Your arm now has frostbite creeping along the inner muscles. The ice that is inkazing your arm is going to slowly kill you," said Haku, sitting down. "Now all I have to do is watch you die," finished Haku, crossing her legs. Kimimaro and Sasuke stood toe to toe. Kimimaro with his superior speed and Sasuke with his superior jutsu control. Sasuke had managed to burn Kimimaro's arms, while Kimimaro had left a large amount of gashes on Sasuke's body. All fighting stopped when everyone felt an evil chakra in the area. They turned to find a woman walking towards them. The woman stood at about 5 feet 9 inches, long black hair, black eyes, wearing the standard grass uniform and a straw hat. "Hello everyone. I couldn't help but notice the fighting and came to investigate. I was rather surprised at the level at which you are battling," said the grass nin. "What's it to you?" asked Tokiko. "Nothing much, except I want to fight myself," said the grass nin as she touched her eye. Karen felt a fear that was more primal than anything, as did the others. Everyone fell to their knees, and the level of power was at least cage. "Interesting. 4 bloodlines in the same place. A nice addition to my collection." Karen stepped back. "Collections? What is this psycho talking about?" "Ni-san, where are you?" thought Karen. The woman was about to walk forward, when a sword thrust shattered the ground, changing the geography for at least a mile around. Small fissures opened, cliffs from, and trees were destroyed. Then another chakra flared. Everyone looked up to see Naruto seething in pure rage. His sword was in his hand and the wind flowing around and off him made him appear calmly sinister. You shouldn't have messed with my friends or sister. Now you're going to discover why the Uzumaki are feared, yelled Naruto as he flew at the woman. The woman blocked a strike from Naruto's sword, but was on the defensive. The woman jumped back as Naruto left a large crater in the earth. She ran through some hand signs before she unleashed a large fireball at Naruto. Naruto slashed the fireball in two, before he flew through hand signs. The woman jumped out the way as the ground under her froze. Naruto pushed a large amount of wind chakra into his legs and jetted forward. He thrust the sword at the woman's chest, but she stopped the attack with her left hand. She gripped the sword hard enough to throw Naruto. Naruto flipped and landed in a tree. The woman landed on a small ledge and looked at her hand, which was bleeding badly. Interesting. You have power, but not enough power to beat me, said the woman. I'll give you your fill of power, you twisted fuck, yelled Naruto. Then let us put our lives on the line in this battle, and take our skills up to the appropriate level, said the woman. Naruto flared his chakra. Fine by me, bitch, yelled Naruto. The girl bit her hand and wiped the blood across a tattoo of a snake. Summoning style. Summoning jutsu, yelled the woman as smoke enveloped her. When the smoke cleared, she stood atop a 100-long brown snake. Naruto snorted. Please, like I'm scared of some big lizard, said Naruto. The snake charged at Naruto. Naruto sheathed his sword and then quickly unsheathed his sword just as the snake opened its mouth. The snake was split all the way down the middle. The woman was astonished by this power. An attack that could travel 100 feet with the swing of a sword was unheard of. The woman in question practically had an orgasm over it. I must have his power for myself. With 2 Uchihas and 2 Uzumaki, I could have the ultimate body within 15 to 20 years, though TTHW woman. The woman make 5 shadow clones that charged at Naruto, Kimimaro, Tokiko, Haku, and Karen, while the woman herself charged at Sasuke. Naruto growled at the clone before he slashed it into pieces, but not before it punctured his neck. Naruto ignored his own pain, turned around, and was about to destroy the clone heading towards his sister, but it was too late. Karen, Kimimaro, Sasuke, and Tokiko were bitten on their necks. Karen screamed out bloody murder before she fell to the ground crying in pain while holding her shoulder. Kimimaro roared in pain holding his shoulder while trying to hold back his pain. Tokiko collapsed onto the ground, while Sasuke ran off screaming about his brother. Karen, yelled Naruto as he ran over to her. He looked at her neck and saw a curse seal forming. Naruto's eyes widened. It was a curse seal of wind. 1. Naruto picked her up bridal style as she cried. Shush. It's all right, baby, you're going to be fine, said Naruto. Karen continued to cry. Ni-san, scram, cry, hurts so bad. Cried Karen. I know, said Naruto, before he looked at the woman. Naruto flared his chakra and allowed some of Kyuubi's chakra to bleed. Thought. You'd better leave, before I let Kyuubi out to kill you, Orochimaru, said Naruto. The girl smirked, before she pulled back her face, revealing a pale face with purple eyes and silted gold eyes, purple eyeliner. He stood at about 6 feet 2 inches. Very good, Naruto-kun. I will return for you and your sister, said Orochimaru, sinking into the dirt. Naruto set Karen down. Naruto began to stumble, before he grabbed his head in pain, before he slammed it into a tree to get rid of the pain. Kyuubi, get rid of this damn thing, yelled Naruto inside his mind. Alright kid, but this is going to be a bit blast of power, said Kyuubi. I don't care. Do it, yelled Naruto inside his mind. Kyuubi did as asked and unleashed a power blast of red-orange chakra from Naruto's body. Naruto screamed in pain as the seal on his shoulder vanished. Unexpectedly, the seals on the others burned slightly, releasing a purple mist, but remaining mostly intact. The chakra radiated on around for at least 30 meters before it stopped. Naruto collapsed on the ground in pain. He pulled himself closer to Karen and the others and passed out. Unknown time later, Naruto slowly opened his eyes to see Gurren and Fu standing over him. Kimimaro, Haku, and Karen were already up. They sat around a campfire. Ak nursed their necks. What happened? Asked Naruto, sitting up and rubbing his head before popping his neck. We felt Kyuubi's chakra flare before we came running. Also Team 7 was gone along with a set of the scrolls you collected, said Fu. Naruto looked around, before he saw his katana and picked it up. How long was I out? Asked Naruto. About half a day, said Kimimaro. Alright then, let's head to the tower, said Naruto as he jumped into the trees with the others following. They moved quickly and arrived at the tower within 2 hours. Once inside they looked at the saying on the wall. Karen, Gurren, 2 sets of scrolls need to be opened, said Naruto. They took the scrolls and threw them after they opened them. They stepped back as 2 people stepped out. The first was Kushina Uzumaki and the other figure was Delilah. Good job you guys, said Kushina bowing to her kids and students. Delilah smirked, before she walked up Kimimaro and kissed both his cheeks, and then kissed Naruto on the lips. And let me be the first to congratulate you on passing the second exam, said Delilah. Karen, Haku, Gurren, and Fu jumped into air cheering. Kimimaro smiled and crossed his arms. Naruto too smiled. That's all for now. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments.